So, let's talk about one of the most confusing aspects of Warhammer. Chaos. Chaos in Warhammer 40k isn't an ethereal concept, but rather an actual realm of existence called the Warp or the Immaterium. And as such, it has its own laws and logic by which it exists. Granted, said laws and logic are very much twisted and can be incomprehensible to mortal minds, as it is literally pure chaos, but still, they are there. One of the biggest pillars of this realm is the four major chaos gods who are locked in a never-ending power struggle. They embody different archetypes of chaos and as such do not particularly love each other. However, under a little closer inspection of their ins and outs, some very interesting points start to arise. So I decided to take a closer look at the Big Four and tell you all about this paradoxical nature of the Chaos Gods. First of all, let's talk about the gods themselves, as they are a very colorful bunch, and who better to start with than the blood god himself. Khorne is the god of war, bloodletting, slaughter, murder, bloody murder, and somehow honor. However, Khorne's version of honor is quite literal. Don't backstab people, front stab them instead. He very much resembles Mars or Ares, and although Warhammer has another much more pronounced ripoff of the original Greco-Roman god of war, the parallels are very clear here as well. Second in line is Nurgle, the god of disease, decay, and death. Granddad is a very jovial god, and all he wants is to give out gifts. And by gifts, I mean plagues and viruses that, for example, will turn your anus inside out, and or make you a zombie that is fully aware but cannot control its actions. Absolutely fabulous, wouldn't you agree? But Nurgle is also the god of acceptance of your mortality and rebirth, or more appropriately, the circle of life. The third chaos god is Tzeentch, the god of change, sorcery, lies, intrigue, schemes, ambition, knowledge, and destiny. He is both the most insufferable and fun god of the pantheon, who loves to fuck with everybody just for the sake of it. Unlike Khorne, Tzeentch actively encourages backstabbing both within and outside of his ranks, and those of his subjects who do it best usually rise in the hierarchy of his faction. However, even if you manage to gain Tzeentch's favor, he might turn you into a chaos spawn regardless, because betrayal and change are the things Tzeentch lives for. Well, he is also obsessed with gaining knowledge, but scheming is definitely his favorite pastime. The last part of this unholy four-leaf clover of despair is Slaanesh. And if Tzeentch is all about backstabbing, knowledge and change, Shihide Who Thirsts is all about backshots, drugs and rock and roll. Birthed from millions of years worth of hedonistic actions of the most psychically inclined race, the Space Elves, Slaanesh embodies the search for excess and pleasure like nothing else in both the material plane and the immaterium. She also ate the souls of about 90% of the elven race upon being born, which is absolutely unrelated to the topic at hand, but the pain and suffering of knife years make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside, so I like to mention this event every chance I can. And now that you've got the gist of the Big Four, let me tell you what exactly is so paradoxical about the Chaos Gods. The Warp is a kind of mirror realm to the material plane of existence, a horrific, constantly changing hellhole made completely out of psychic energy and souls, but still a realm nonetheless. It is powered by the emotions and actions of mortals, and as a natural extension of the Immaterium, the Chaos Gods are also affected by it. However, the catch lies in what exactly fuels each and every god, and here things get a little tricky. On paper, everybody who partakes in each god's preferred pastime activities, as well as feels certain emotions, fuels the respective god with power, as each god has its own domain of influence. In a very generalistic way of describing it, Khorne has battle, bloodletting, skull collecting, and rage, Nurgle has disease spreading, decay, and stagnation, Tzeentch has scheming, spellcasting, and ambition, and Slaanesh has excessive, degenerate behavior. But here is the thing, these areas of influence are extremely intertwined. If the subjects of any god go to battle, that empowers Khorne, no matter who is actually fighting whom, as Khorne doesn't care from where the blood flows, only that it does. Each god is also stagnant in their own way, not wanting to change no matter what happens, which empowers Nurgle. Even Tzeentch is so hard-bent on change that it becomes a paradoxical form of stagnation in its own right. Every god and their subjects are extremely ambitious, always climbing the power ladder and trying to get to the top, which empowers Tzeentch. And Slaanesh, well, Slaanesh is the worst of the bunch, as her main thing is excess. Everything each god is about is literally different versions of excess. The overlap in the gods' areas of influence is not new in mythology. For example, take Ares and Athena. Both are gods of war, but with very different approaches. One is the god of slaughter, the other is the goddess of calculated warfare. But the amount of interconnectedness the Chaos Gods have is something I personally find quite unique. It kind of pushes the idea that the Chaos Gods are not entirely separate entities, but rather different manifestations of chaos as a whole. Kind of like Lucifer, Satan, Beelzebub, Asmodeus, etc. all being names of one entity, the devil, and yet associated with different deadly sins. Or the four horsemen of the apocalypse being various stages of said apocalypse, but rather than having their domains of influence flow into one another like the horsemen do, the big four are stepping on each other's toes. This theory is supported even further by the fact that arguably the strongest champions of chaos, like Abaddon or Be'lakor, don't follow a specific god but chaos undivided. They have the blessings of every member of the Big Four at the same time, which makes them far stronger in a general sense than any champion of a particular god. And here lies the main paradox of the Chaos Gods. As much as the gods hate each other and want to see the other three brought low before them, in actuality they are engaged in a very parasitic yet symbiotic relationship. The Chaos Gods are leeches sucking power from each other and are bound to do so until the end of time and space. Because of this, none of the Big Four can truly win or lose in their power struggle. The Chaos Gods are a self-sustaining battery that cannot run out as long as there are mortal souls and emotions to power the Immaterium. And even that might not be true. For all we know, the material plane of existence could blow up and the warp would still be there, fueled by this four-way sparring match the gods have. So to sum up, from a purist standpoint, the portrayal of chaos in Warhammer 40k might be frustrating, confusing and, well, even enraging. But frankly, I find the way the warp and its gods operate very much on brand. They are literally chaos. They're supposed to be chaotic and strange. And yes, I know that the well most likely doesn't go as deep as I make it out to be. Given their track record, Games Workshop writers probably wrote the Big Four as just general size of evil shit, and later realized there were some logical problems with their creation. Not to mention the dumber rules of the warp, like the when a Chaos God is born, regardless of the timeline in the material plane, it was always their shtick, which is absolutely bullshit. And yet, even that is still in line with the general idea of chaos. So regardless, whether you love it or hate it, chaos is still one of the most puzzling and yet important parts of a very strange setting to begin with. A place which is quite fitting for the paradoxical nature of the Chaos Gods.